So, Stephanie, hi.
Hello.
We are here to talk about you taking on the new role of Chief Growth Officer for Lippe Taylor Group, your third role at Lippe Taylor Group, which we will get into.
Yeah.
But I thought maybe we could start by first talking about sort of your path and the story behind how you got here and why you're credentialed as our new Chief Growth Officer.
Yeah, thank you. So I've been doing some version of PR and communications for about 30 years. And I've been on the client side, I've overseen corporate communications departments, but I'd say most of the time I've been on the agency side. And I've never held a traditional growth role or business development role before, but what I have done is I've run big P&Ls where I had a lot of responsibility for just unlocking growth in my own P&L and figuring out whether that was, pure new or growing businesses organically. How do you do that? And how do you get good at that over the years? So that was always my orientation, even as a manager of people. How are we going to get the best from people? How are we going to unlock opportunity in the business? So this idea of growing and unlocking was something that was really interesting to me throughout my career. And it just became a question of doing it on a bigger and bigger scale as I got more senior. Then, as you know, 2 years ago, for a lot of different reasons, I took a bit of a pivot in my career and I got really interested in the idea of executive coaching, another way to express this idea of unlocking the best in people and unlocking potential. And so with the good fortune of getting to stay with the agency and just have a new role, which was leading the internal coaching program, doing that for 2 years. And then bringing that experience with all of those other decades of growing businesses as an agency leader back into this new role that you've created and that I'm really excited to step into. So definitely not a traditional career path towards a growth officer, but I think I'm bringing different kinds of credentials to it and I'm really excited.
I agree, and I think it's also a fit because, of course, we're not thinking of growth through probably the traditional lens of growth being a sales initiative.
Yeah.
We're thinking about it in a more comprehensive way.
Yes, exactly. When I think about, and I have thought about this, like what's the connection between coaching and business development or driving growth? And, one of the things that I love about coaching is that it gives you these very fundamental tools that help you get to the heart of a challenge or an issue faster. And it starts with asking the right questions. So the idea of an open-ended question, for example, that helps somebody examine a place where they're stuck. So when you extrapolate that out to the organizational level and think about, okay, where are we as an organization with new business growth? We'll stay with new business for now, although organic is part of this. And what are we doing well, and where are we getting in our own way, and where are we bogging down? Whether it's, the way we're staffing a pitch or the way we're interrogating the client brief. Are we asking the right questions from the beginning of the pitch process? But if you take a coach mindset, you can learn things about the process and do things better, faster, more smoothly, with less friction. But it starts with those good questions. So that's the connection of coaching and business development that I'm interested in.
Yeah, there's also something, I think interesting from my perspective. You brought up the new business process, RFPs. You've also talked about unlocking growth. In my experience, clients aren't typically putting an RFP out looking for a direct answer. They're looking for a partner that's going to help them unlock their own ideas, their own growth, their own next step. So I'm curious your thoughts on how coaching, which you've done internally, maybe can help clients also as they think through that RFP moment, right, where they're like, I need a breakthrough. Yeah. How is your background going to help them right at that moment?
Yeah. You really inspired me when you talked about the moment of the RFP not being something we should look at transactionally, which I think, look, in the pace of things, it's easy. RFPs, if you're lucky, as an agency, they're coming in across the transom, you're out there working your networks, and you have a lot of them coming in. So it can be a process that gets on rails. But if you do stop to consider, first of all, there's a human behind the RFP, right? There's a client who's either come off of a failure in the business or has had a really unsatisfying experience with another agency. Or, frankly, their next promotion could depend on bringing in the right partner. But there are human concerns and needs underneath every RFP. So if we are approaching it as, what does this client actually want above and beyond what they're telling us in the actual brief? So again, thinking of the beginning of the process as a moment where you can start winning the business even before you've been in the room with them, thinking about, let's start with how are we going to ask questions about this brief that's going to get us to some better information. And we've talked about this, open-ended questions. So, and I'd love to know this from you too. If you think about the best question you ever asked a client, I bet it was not a yes or no question. So I'm curious, do you have an example of like a great badass question that you've asked a client?
I mean, nothing's coming to mind right off the bat.
All right.
I can tell you that I agree entirely, right? I talk about seeking iceberg responses, right? So asking questions where they start to give you a little bit of an answer, and that's the part that's above the water. And then as you silently just let them go, all of a sudden you're getting the rest of the iceberg, right? And so that can be questions like, what's a good example that you aspire to, or something that's just very open-ended. And they'll grab something that's right out of their recent memory. But then as they talk, as long as you don't stop them, which is sometimes what people tend to do, is then jump right in and say, oh, I like that one too, right? If you instead resist the urge and you let them keep going, then they will explore, right? And they will give you the rest of the iceberg. And that's probably where there's something really worth mining it.
So I have to say, you probably would be a good coach, because I want to hit on silence, because you said silence. You ask the question and then you stop talking and let them go. And it's interesting that that's actually a core competency of coaching as defined by the International Coaching Federation. It's literally...
Which you're certified by.
Yes, I am certified. I am now a second level credential, professional certified coach. Thank you.
Does it come with like a green belt or...
No, but you do get a little
belt?
pin. You get a lapel pin, which I'm not wearing today. Should have thought of that. Should have worn it. But this idea of allowing for silence, it's actually a coaching competence, because it's what you just said. If you stop talking, but if you've asked the right question, people, whether it's a client or someone being coached, will start to arrive at their own conclusions of what's really going on with them. So I love that you went to that distinction of silence, which is hard for all of us. I can share with you one of my favorite questions, and it was definitely a risk. So I think asking provocative questions, you have to use your judgment, right? Is this a pure new to you client situation? Is it an existing client that's given you a crack at another part of their business through a competitive RFP? So you use your judgment going in, but it was a classic scenario. I happened to be the senior most person on the pitch team. So it's me and the rest of the pitch team. We're on a conference call back in the days before Zoom, and we're asking our questions about the brief. We've gotten to the list of the end of our list, and it's been good, it's been helpful. And this was a client we knew, but we were being given an opportunity to pitch for a whole new part of their business. So it was, high stakes. Mm-hmm. And this question came to me, and I thought, this is either going to be literally the most brilliant thing I've ever asked, or the worst. Oh, and I don't know.
Bust.
Yeah. And I thought, and let's just see what happens. So this was the question: what would have us lose this pitch? Okay. Now, speaking of silence, there was silence on the other end.
Oh.
And my team was like, what did she just do? But the client took a beat. It was probably 10 seconds that felt like 10 minutes. And then she said, I have never been asked that question before, and I have to tell you, I love that question. Thank you for asking. She took another minute, she reflected, and then she told us. And what she told us had nothing to do with, well, if you clearly come to the table and you don't have the right skills, you don't know how to do this, you don't know how to do that, that's a problem. If your budget's out of whack, that's a problem. What she said was, what would have you lose this pitch is, we don't feel like you've heard us. So, again, listening.
Continuous theme here.
Yeah. And spoiler alert, we won the pitch. But I think that skill of hearing the client, hearing between the lines, and getting at what they really need is critical. And so I think, you can see how the dots are connecting. That is kind of a coaching mindset, but frankly, anyone can approach it.
Yeah, it's interesting hearing between the lines. It does feel like sometimes you can receive a brief and it's really clear what the client wants, and it feels like they know what they want. And then sometimes you can receive a brief and it's so generic that you're like, they don't know what they want.
Yeah.
They just know they don't have it right now, right? So I'm curious, have you experienced that? And how do you help sort of guide them then to even just putting in place the parameters of what they're looking for?
Yeah. It almost feels like that situation where the brief tends to be more generic than not is almost more frequent. And so I think there are a couple of things that I've done, and some of them are kind of a calculated risk, and some of them are just hedging bets a little bit. And first of all, if there's an opportunity in the pitch process for any kind of the client will let you come in and do a tissue session or just a conversation to pressure test some of your first instincts on strategy, that can be a place where you start to push them to be more specific and not as generic. So we heard you say that you're interested in reaching Gen Z. Okay, all right. So first of all, we have some thoughts about what that means and how that might be relevant to your business. Can we talk to you about that and pressure test some of our assumptions with you before the actual RFP presentation? That's one way to do it. So you frankly help educate them so they can get more specific. That's one way to do it if you don't have that luxury of that check-in. Then another thing is just be explicitly clear. If you feel with all of the research you've done and your data and your understanding of what their business is, tell them in the pitch and say, look, you told us you want Gen Z, so here's a way we could broadly reach Gen Z. Here's a way we could, drill down on Gen Z. So you're showing them your thought process. You're hearing that they asked for Gen Z, I'm using that as a proxy, obviously.
It does seem to be common these days.
It is very common. And so we heard you. This is what we did with what we heard. What do you think? So you're showing them. I think sometimes we just go right into being smart and we forget to acknowledge, we know you asked for this, we'd like to show you this, but we heard you ask for that. So it's a little bit more of a conversation.
It's interesting. Where you're going it's the thought process, right? Showing your work a little bit.
Yeah.
Here's how we arrived here, the thought process that we endeavored, which does feel very much like coaching as well, right? You think about how these things kind of interact with one another, and it is about not necessarily where you arrive, because I can't remember the last time we pitched a plan, the client bought the plan and did it, right? Yeah. That's just not how it works. There's a lot more sort of partnership and everything that takes place after a pitch. But the thought process is really important. And same thing, obviously, with coaching. I want to pivot us a little bit. Let's talk about the impact of coaching and the broader definition of growth. Yeah. Beyond just obviously new business and helping clients unlock. Your role as our coach in residence is something that many of our either current leaders or emerging leaders have pointed to as, in one of our surveys, they called it game changing for their careers. It's been it's had a big impact here. Yeah. I think it's interesting that we put it in place at a time of sort of exponential growth for the agency, right? So there were significantly more people working here, but we really sort of went laser focused in your work on a relatively small number of people, right? How do you think about the ripple effect of that? How do you think about having an impact by working one-on-one with somebody that could impact a much larger organization?
It's really exciting because when you commit to a coaching program over the long term, which we've done, and treat it as just almost this intrinsic part of our business strategy, is that we are going to devote this amount of time to these leaders and not just senior leaders too. We've got mid-level folks in the program too. What you start to see over time is they get so familiar with the distinctions of coaching, and I can't tell you how many times in a session someone I've been working with for a while will say, now I just want you to know, I thought about this in between our sessions and I had you in my head, and I said, wait a minute, what's a coaching question I could ask right now with this person I'm having a challenge with? So the people in the program are playing back to me how they've internalized some of the work we're doing together, and they're using it in their day-to-day interactions with their peers, with their own subordinates. And so the ripple effect is what I would describe as coaching becomes part of the company culture in a way that I just don't think you can do unless you're going deep with, it's almost like you're 80 for 20. Mm-hmm. Who are the people who are most, first of all, who need it the most? They need that level of support. And then who are also in a position to spread it because they're managing teams.
Mm-hmm. So when we first sat down and we started mapping out this job description, we talked about there being 3 pillars of growth here, right? We talked about kind of our clients are expecting one kind of growth, right? They need brand growth, they need business growth. The agency is expecting a kind of growth. The agency wants to grow its revenues. It wants to be able to take on, assignments with greater impact and influence around the industry, et cetera. And in the middle is people growth. right? Because our clients sell things, right? They sell bottles of water or pharmaceuticals or whatever, right? And we sell ideas and people's time. And in the middle of that's the people, right? And how you optimize those things.
Yeah.
So can you weave this red thread for us? How does Chief Growth Officer bring all that together for us now?
Yeah, it's I mean, again, it's such a unicorn role, but that's what's so great about it. And I love that we do that here. I really do. So if you think about the three, I mean, I guess you could say that the three areas of my responsibility do correspond to those three areas of growth you just talked about. There's obviously the internal coaching program, which is solely focused on the people, unlocking their best, helping them get unstuck so they can continue to operate as effectively as they can, which invariably is going to lead to things like stronger client relationships, better work, more growth. Then there's the piece of the pure sort of growth piece of the role, which is literally leading new business efforts and using a coaching mindset to make sure that we are making sure that our process serves us and that it's frictionless and that we actually can get to better proposals faster, bringing all of the incredible resources of this agency to bear. And then there's also, we haven't talked about this as much, but planning is reporting to me now as well. And so when you think about that piece of clients have services and brands and products that they need to sell, or they have a corporate reputation that they need to promote or evolve. And what is the role of the planning discipline and all of that? You know, using data collaboratively, finding insights that unlock everything. I feel like unlocking is this word I keep using. And so I think when I'm going back to your red thread question, there is a very clear tapestry here of using a coach mindset to help get to better insights, you know, that help brands evolve, to unlock the best of our people, and to improve our new business process so that we are winning more consistently. But also, and you've said this, not winning for winning's sake, winning because we want to work with clients at a level that is actually doing work differently. That's not doing advertising or marketing or frankly PR the way it's been done for years and years.
Yeah, and I think that's important. And I think that is intertwined with the new business process and with getting the best out of our people, because it's a big leap for a client, in particular in a new business process, to go with a different approach as opposed to a tried and true or more established approach or the way they've always done things. And so you do have to earn their trust, right? And the people on your team have to really believe in it as well. And unlocking that is apparently the job of our Chief Unlocking Officer.
There you go, CUO. You know, it reminds me of my experience at other agencies that will go unnamed, where there was a similar vision, I would say, to reinvent and reframe what it is we do. It's not PR anymore, it's not traditional PR. So you can very effectively deploy these new frameworks of this is actually what we do. But if you don't spend the time helping your people really understand what's different about that and then give them the tools that they need to basically almost become little mini change agents, right? Then it's just going to be a tagline. It's just going to be an interview someone gave in the trades, but your people aren't living it. So for us, if we're going to talk about earned marketing, if we're going to talk about frictionless as sort of the tip of the spear of that, as an idea that galvanizes everybody, we also have to acknowledge that we're asking people to continually reinvent the way they do things. It's not your grandmother's PR. It's not your mother's PR. And so that requires coaching support. It requires helping people think through new ways of working in a way that doesn't feel disruptive, helping them embrace new ways of working, including collaborating with different kinds of colleagues that they probably didn't work with coming up through the ranks. So I think about that a lot. If you're going to go out there and say, we're not just doing PR anymore, we're not just a communications agency, you have to give your people the support so they can come along for that journey.
Yep. And I also think the moment of a new business process, not the pitch, the full process, can be the most magical experience in somebody's career.
Yes,
it also can be the most painful.
Yes, it can also, yeah.
And the system around that, the way that it's set up to get the most out of people, is probably the most important component, right, of how we go at this. And certainly there's a success component to that, is the agency winning business. Mm-hmm. There's a success component to that for our clients. Like, are they getting the best ideas and the best partnership? And then for our people, this is where, for me, new business is what should galvanize careers. It should be the moment where stars are born, so to speak.
Yes.
And as long as we're unlocking them, right?
Yeah.
Then we're going to be able to get that.
That's right. That's inspiring because it's absolutely letting our own people find those moments where they can step up in that process and do things they didn't even know they could do, because new business does accelerate, what we ask of people. But then the work, if we have pitch teams where people are ignited and they're basically, we're setting the bar high because that's how pitches always are, and they feel like they're delivering their best, we're going to get to better work. So then what we're delivering to the client, who, to go back to our earlier conversation about, is in a moment of transition for some reason, this is not a transactional moment, and help them see their own business differently, maybe even see themselves as clients differently, then a star is born for them as well. The work makes everybody a star, but, new possibilities are unlocked. And it happens because of what we're delivering to the client and what they see in us as thought partners, as well as what we're delivering for our own people who get to step up and shine as part of this internal process. And when those stars align, that's when the magic really happens, and I'm really excited for that.
Well, I'm excited for it as well. Thank you for agreeing to be our new Chief Growth Officer. And I think that we've decided here today that this is going to be a strategy of unlocking, frictionless unlocking
Yes.
for our people and our clients.
That's right. Thank you.